Welcome to Todd Talk. Today I want to talk about David Lynch.
Todd Talk is brought to you by Garmin Bosia. I want my Garmin Bosia back.
Last month, David Lynch died a few days before what would have been his 79th birthday. The guy had a pretty long life. He was a lifelong smoker, and a few months ago, he revealed that he had been diagnosed with emphysema and was housebound. He wasn't going anywhere, so he wasn't in great health. So while it wasn't super surprising, it was really a bummer when I heard that he had died. I've pretty much always been a David Lynch fan. I first sort of stumbled across him when I was in high school, and then in my 20s and 30s, uncovered more of his work and learned more about him. And he was just, to me, the quintessential artist. He lived and breathed art. It was his entire life. And I think most people know him because of his feature films. He made a lot of movies from the early 80s all the way through the 2000s, but he did a tremendous amount of other work. He made many short films. He did a couple of TV shows. The most famous is probably Twin Peaks. He did a few concert videos. He did dozens and dozens of commercials. He released a couple of albums. He did a whole bunch of music videos, and he did a lot of visual art, paintings, sculpture, stuff like that. Later in life, he did some web series. Every day he would announce the weather in Los Angeles, or occasionally he would pick a number out of a jar and reveal today's number. The guy was real odd, real quirky, but very authentic. He was very big into meditation, transcendental meditation, lifelong meditator. And he was a very kind and very introspective, very wise person. So I just want to share with you my top 9 favorite David Lynch things. So at number 9, I want to start with a little short film called David Lynch Cooks Quinoa. In this film, he is at home and he just talks about how much he likes quinoa, and he prepares some and then he lets it boil. And while it's boiling, he goes out and has a cigarette, and he recounts this story of riding a train. And it is the best way, I think, to get to know him in just a few minutes. At number 8, I want to go with the documentary, The Art Life. This is a documentary about David Lynch, and it interviews him and talks about him, really reveals what he's all about, what he cares about, also kind of recounts how he got started. And there was a tremendous amount of passion and luck, and it's a really interesting story. At number 7, I'm going to go with his first feature film, which was called Eraserhead. Eraserhead is a weird movie. It's kind of uncomfortable, it's kind of gross, and it deals with some themes that he kind of revisits through some of his other films. That's one thing that's really interesting about David Lynch is once you start to consume more of his work, you get a better sense of who he is and a clearer lens with which to view all of his work. Everything sort of informs everything else. And once you know this seems to make a little bit more sense. Some people find his work really hard to watch or difficult to understand. And there's not a lot of logic to it. There's a lot of feeling and a lot of themes. And again, like if you've watched The Art Life and you know David Lynch's story growing up, when you watch Eraserhead, you kind of have a better idea of what he's trying to say. At number 6, I'm going to go with his second album, which was called Crazy Clown Time. The album's real cool, real moody. He's not a great singer, but he's a really fantastic storyteller, and somehow that sort of makes up for it. I kind of lump David Lynch in with other voices like Leonard Cohen or Lou Reed. Not the most beautiful voices, but really fantastic storytelling through song. Crazy Clown Time, front to back, is a nice album to listen to. Some of it is real simple, some of it's real moody, some of it's real weird, but it's a great album. Number 5, I'm going with Blue Velvet. So after Eraserhead, David Lynch made Elephant Man, which got some Oscar nominations and a lot of accolades. And then after Elephant Man, he made the movie Dune, which he was not happy with and didn't review very well. It's become a little bit of a cult classic. But after Dune, he decided to kind of do his own thing. He wanted more creative control, and he made the film Blue Velvet. Blue Velvet is one of those movies that is a little bit dated in that most of its problems could be solved with cell phones. But that aside, it's a really interesting ride, and Dennis Hopper plays one of the most wicked villains that has ever been in a movie. Number 4, I'm going to go with the original Twin Peaks series. Twin Peaks ran for 2 seasons back in 1989, 1990, and it was a story about a murder in a small town and an FBI agent coming to the town to solve this murder. It was a little bit of a police procedural, a little bit of a soap opera. You really got to know all the people in this town, and they were all so wonderful and such great characters. And then it got a little bit supernatural. As far as David Lynch works go, this might be one of the most accessible. It explores a lot of the themes that he likes to explore. A girl in trouble, a quaint and peaceful looking place that has an ugly side. The second season is a little sillier. We get into the Pine Weasel and the Miss Twin Peaks contest and things like that, but it's still very fun. My third pick is going to be the film Lost Highway. After Twin Peaks, David Lynch did a couple of smaller projects. He did the film Fire Walk with Me. He did Wild at Heart with Laura Dern and Nicolas Cage, and that film was based on a book by a guy named Barry Gifford. David Lynch got together with Barry Gifford, and they wrote the screenplay for Lost Highway. Lost Highway is a really surreal, really dark film, has some interesting thematic stuff. About halfway through the movie, all the characters change. It's very peculiar. The soundtrack is fantastic. It was produced by Trent Reznor, so it has some Nine Inch Nails and Marilyn Manson and Rammstein music, some David Bowie, some Lou Reed. It was a great soundtrack. First time I watched it, I had no idea what I just sat through. It's really bizarre. But upon revisiting it and thinking about it, it's a really cool story and a really interesting way to visit some of those themes. My number 2 pick is Twin Peaks: The Return. 25 years after the end of Twin Peaks, he did a 3rd season. Expectations and hopes were really high for this series. And in my opinion, it is something that we just could not have conceived of. It absolutely subverts all of your expectations. What you thought you were going to get is not at all what you got. We explore things that we didn't even have questions about, and questions that we had never get answered. It takes us on this trip that is so interesting and so cool. One of the episodes has this shot that I think is almost 8 minutes long, unbroken, and it's one of the coolest and weirdest bits of television that has ever been made. When that series ended, I was both elated and heartbroken, and it was absolutely wonderful. And my number 1 pick is Mulholland Drive. Mulholland Drive is just one of the best films that has ever been made. It is an incredible movie and an incredible story, and it is like a moving painting. I know some David Lynch purists are going to be like, hey, what about Inland Empire? What about Fire Walk with Me? What about On the Air? All of his stuff is great. This is absolutely subjective and my opinion as far as what really resonates with me. But like I said, there's just so much stuff that he's made, and a lot of it's just really, really cool. So that's my top 9. He was absolutely a one of a kind. There will never be another person exactly like that. And it's really amazing the body of work that he has left us with. I really encourage you to check out some of his work. Like I said, some of it's really weird, some of it's really confusing. If you don't like one thing, you might like another thing. But like I said, as you start to dig into it, it all sort of builds on itself. And I think it's really, really worthwhile. So much art that happens in the world now is for money or for profit, and just to make money for record labels and movie studios and things like that. There's not a lot of great artists in the world who just make things because they need to be made. I would say, as far as filmmakers, people like Denis Villeneuve or Robert Eggers are really the few, artists that are out there. People like Wes Anderson, who write and film and create the entire vision rather than a script going through a bunch of people's hands and then it being directed by one person and written by somebody else and edited by another person and then the studio has to sign off on it. Those things are just really commercial and really an amalgamation of a bunch of things that people think will make money rather than the vision of an artist. These original works that people come up with, I think, are really important and easy to skip and forget. So let me know what you think. Leave me a comment, and I'll see you in the next one.